Donor Recognition 101 with Helen Arnold. Helen is with Arnold Olson Associates and has been working with nonprofits on capital campaigns since 1971. She recently authored Volunteering for the Genius. I'm Rachel Cruz with Presentations Inc. and Araya Digital Signage Suite. They are companies that specialize in custom donor recognition displays and digital signage software. Thank you for joining us today.
How long have you been in the business of fundraising and capital campaigns?
I did my first capital campaign for the Junior League of Chicago in 1971.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
And you've been in fundraising kind of ever since then, or?
I have been in either as a volunteer staff or consultant. I have been in the nonprofit arena for, hold on, let me count, over 50 years.
Nice. So you've really seen a lot of changes then in how things are done.
Oh, yeah.
Where it used to be...
In 1970, there were only 60,000 nonprofits in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And now there are 1.4 million.
What are some mistakes that are often made by boards and organizations when in the beginning phases of a donor wall?
I'm going to take donor wall as donor recognition. However, it may be a wall, it may be something else. I think one needs to get away from the visualization of only on a wall because there are a lot of other ways to do it. The first mistake organizations make is they don't think about it in the first place. That is the major one and happens more often than you think. And then once they think about it, they don't plan for it. And they're generally, when the cost of these things comes up, there's a lot of pushback. If they haven't budgeted for it, there's a lot of pushback from the board on the cost. And so when one is presenting the need for a donor wall, because of course it's imperative, that's why most people give. They want to be recognized. You have to clearly explain the return on the investment, that it's incredibly important that is very, very clear to the board. If they don't recognize their donors, they're not going to have donors very long.
For sure. I can totally see that. And when organizations are planning for a capital campaign like this, is there a percentage for construction of a wall or a donor recognition kind of piece that should go into that? I know that 8% to 14% roughly should go into fundraising or feasibility and that kind of planning, but is there something that's just for that piece that stays on the wall or in the building somewhere?
It depends, and I'm going to tell you how this works out. At 8%, you're going to probably have to add 2% for donor recognition of one kind and another. That would be the wall, the parties, whatever, any giveaways you do. The larger the project, the lower the percentage is going to be for donor recognition. Because if you're recognizing 100 donors for $1 million program campaign, and you're recognizing 100 donors for a $10 million campaign, they're going to take up the same space. So it's proportional. If it depends on how many donors you have, it depends on what kind of space is available, or where they're going to put their recognition unit or whatever that looks like, and that's going to vary a lot. In a clinic, I have in Cedar Rapids, a community health free clinic had one small wall where they had to fit an awful lot of donors, and it seemed like it was really expensive at the time. However, it wasn't going to be any more than that, and if the project got bigger, the percentage of the project that went to the donor recognition would be smaller. It depends on the size of the project.
Sure.
Where you put that. I would say 2% would be at 8% would be pretty standard.
Okay, that makes sense. How long before the installation or unveiling of a building addition or whatever the capital campaign is for should the wall or donor recognition be planned or ordered?
It should be planned from the beginning. You can't order it all until the end because you won't have all the gifts in. But you can get started on it. It's a process. It isn't something that can be done overnight. It takes time, and you should be working with your installation people and your design people right from the beginning, so the design is integrated into the project, into the building, or whatever it looks like. So it's part of the project, but it can't be completed till near the end because you're not going to have all the gifts in until then.
Right. You don't want it to look like an afterthought, right?
That would be best if you don't. Sometimes it happens that way. Sometimes I have had campaigns where they completely ignored any donor recognition until the end and then went, oh gosh, I guess we ought to do this. Yeah. It depends on, it's up to the consultant or the fundraiser or somebody to make the organization really aware of what they need to do.
Right. What types of recognition have you seen besides the walls? We were just talking about the fact that it's not always necessarily a donor wall, but sometimes it's something else. What other types of donor recognition are pretty popular now?
If you can imagine it, it can be done. There are everything from waterfalls to carved trees. It can be anything. The beauty of presentations and of AREA is they have a history of never having any two projects look anything alike. You could not in a million years tell they came from the same company because they're so focused on the client. There are organizations that have donor trees, and each leaf is a donor, and they sell the same tree to everybody, and it all looks the same. Or the famous bricks in the floor, bricks in the wall. That's standard. You can, but you see it a lot, and it amazes me both how creative donor recognition units can be and how much some of them can look alike. And sure. Everything is all over. Anything is, you can go from the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C., where everything is etched in that beautiful shiny wall. All the names are etched. That's a remarkable piece of art all by itself.
Right.
I prefer donor recognition units that look like art or are interactive, something that is not super static, I guess is the word. That's sure. Just my preference. It's boring when it's really static.
Right. What is the benefit between a digital or interactive wall as opposed to a physical piece of artwork or a blend of the two?
I think a blend of the two is better, probably the better of all worlds. And I love digital stuff, just love it. The problem is with that you're limited. You may be limited. It depends on what you buy. You may be limited on the number of names you can show at one time. And if somebody wants to see their name, they may have to wait for it to scroll by or come up or whatever that looks like. There are those who really like to be able to attach their eyes to their name right away when they see the donor wall. So if you've got huge, and at that point you're looking at people who almost want their names on buildings. And there are a lot of people who give for that reason, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to understand your donor and what their needs are. And I think you need to it depends on the donor. If they're giving you $5 million, they may want something that feels more permanent than a digital scroll. It just depends. You have to sort of figure that out project by project.
Sure, and there can definitely be a blend of the two where,
Oh, sure, absolutely.
maybe you set a price or a donation amount and go from there.
Right.
And anything under that amount is on your digital wall, and the rest are, getting an actual piece of the art. So.
And having the digital wall, you can update it all the time because you're going to get donations constantly. And I know that when you have a permanent wall that's gone up, if somebody particularly in an endowment or something like that, where it's a bigger piece that is more permanent in an organization, if somebody comes later and gives a big endowment gift, they're going to want to see their name on the wall. But if you've already got those names up there alphabetically and made no accommodation to insert new names, there's a problem.
Right. And that might be something where you can get the digital name up right away, but then, once every 6 months or once a year, you order the new pieces, so you're not constantly putting it out there as well.
Correct.
So that kind of stands for two different purposes as well. When you add the digital.
It is immediate. Digital is immediate. That's the blessing in that. And
sure.
People are thanked right away, and if they feel valued, then they're going to keep giving. And that's
right.
That's important.
Yeah. So the considerations then of whether to add the name just as a digital piece or actually a physical element may depend on the amount of donations and also the cost of that physical element, right? The bar might
Correct.
be set higher if it's a
right.
carving into a rock as opposed to something that.
If you have to recast a brass plate every time somebody gives another gift, it can get awfully expensive.
Right. So
it depends. You have to, that's knowing the client and knowing the organization and how their gifts come in and how they look at their campaigns of if they're gonna have a cutoff date on donations for recognition. It depends. Every campaign is different that way, and every organization has different needs. So you have to. It takes a lot of conversation and a pencil and paper before anything concrete is manufactured. So you're not wasting money.
Right.
Because there are donors who really get very offended at the cost of recognition items. They get very upset.
I can imagine. So it depends on what their purpose for giving is, right? If they're giving because they just want their money to go to the research or to go to the treatment, as opposed to go to a piece of a building that, is also beautiful. And what is the best placement of a donor wall within a hospital or a college or a school or any organization?
Well, those are pretty large entities. There are smaller nonprofits and larger nonprofits. It depends on their plant. If the campaign is for a specific college and a university, if it is for a specific use, if they have a history museum connected with a university, then of course the donor recognition should be in the museum. If it is for the College of Law or the College of Dentistry or whatever, it should be in that college. It shouldn't be at the foundation. Where else would you put it? Because the other part of it is when people come into that college, they are potential donors to that college. They're interested in it or they wouldn't be there. And you want to attract newer donors and entry-level donors and awareness of people that are interested in the mission of that particular college or that particular museum or whatever that looks like. And if you have only a central area, if you take a university and you have campaigns for all these different colleges and you put all the donor recognition in one building, it would be overwhelming and nobody would see anything. Nobody would ever go there. It's the only thing you could put in that building.
Right.
Or athletics, just at the U of I, the athletic building, all their donors are on the walls there, because people interested in athletics go into that building. So you want that.
That makes total sense. What are some common pain points that people run into while planning the donor walls or the donor recognition piece?
Pain points, always cost. Everybody always complains about cost until you can demonstrate the return on the investment. For some reason, particularly, and I'm a boomer, so I can say this, boomers think because if you're a nonprofit, you should everything should be free. It doesn't work that way. It's still a business, has to be run like a business, and part of any business is investing in the future, and investing in the future for a nonprofit is cultivating current and future donors so that you have repeat gifts from your current donors and new gifts from future donors. And part of that is recognition. Recognition is everything for most donors, everything. Being connected with other names that are on the project, being connected with the nonprofit, they want public recognition. The people who don't want it are very few and far between.
Okay.
And then you have to honor that, of course. But it is quantifiable, and you can do a report, and there is a return on investment process that any good consultant can give the organization.
Oh, that's interesting, actually, because you don't always think of a donor wall or a donor recognition piece as something that would actually attract more donors, because sometimes it is a capital campaign that just ends, right? But some things are ongoing research, or there's always new things to build, new equipment to buy in hospitals and colleges and that as well. So do you have any tips for creating donor walls that will attract future donations?
Uniqueness, a unique flavor that echoes what the mission is or what the building is. There's nothing more jarring than having. Let me give you an example. If I go into an historic preservation property, and there's a donor recognition area there, and this is a Queen Anne building with all the gingerbread and all that stuff, it would be very jarring to see an Art Deco flavored donor recognition unit.
Right. So it
wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it has to reflect its environment, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Right.
Or reflect the mission.
No, that makes sense.
The same clinic, community health free clinic. The donor wall there's a unit on it that is a cutout of people, because the clinic is all about people, and so you're echoing what they're doing by, and that's in two places in the clinic, in donor recognition, and that's so it echoes what the clinic is doing. If there were a musical note there, it wouldn't make any sense.
Right. That makes sense. That makes total sense. Yeah, you're going to have a totally different presentation for something like, a pediatrics unit than you are for, say, a recreational entity within a community too. So
you also you have to look at materials too, and color and all that stuff, and that's where the art comes in. But right. In our day and age, I think it would be you can change the art. You can change a whole bunch of stuff on digital displays that you can't change on static displays. So there's got to be a balance there, and there's so much creative stuff you can do with digital that right. was never available until the recent years. So that's a really, really exciting thing. And since I live in Las Vegas, I see all that digital stuff all the time.
It's all around you, I'm sure.
On all the signs, and it's very creative, and what they can put up and display is very compelling to watch, which is, of course, driving up and down the strip, the point of the exercise. The most compelling sign draws people in.
Right. Yeah, and you don't become numb to that, I don't think.
Right.
unless it's
Right.
kind of a boring display or whatever. You just don't become numb to it because we're so used to seeing it on television and on the computers and everywhere else too. So
But there are those donors who want to see their name carved in stone and at the top of the list. So that has to be taken into account too. There is no one answer that's easy for every organization. They have to actually pay attention and think it through.
Right. Yeah, it has to be about what the mission is for their organization as well.
Right.
And reflect that. That makes sense.
And it should take thoughtfulness. It should not be a throwaway part of the project. It should not be, oh yeah, I guess we got to do this attitude. It should take thought, and it should take attention, and it should take time.
And sometimes I'm sure when you are trying to raise money for something that's bigger and better and maybe more important, it is hard to think about putting some of that money towards something that's just attractive and recognizes those people that were a part of it. But it is important to do that.
If you don't, you're going to not be in business long. If you don't take care of your donors, it's all about the relationships you build and the relationships you keep. And part of that is thanking them, and part of that is a donor wall.
There's a time probably when it was about, putting a name on a park bench or there wasn't probably nearly as much you could do with it that was really creative, I guess. But now it's kind of a limitless way to show gratitude,
it is.
Isn't it?
And there's also the hole that everybody always falls into. I don't care where you are. Of that's the way we've always done it, and that's the way it's always been.
Right.
Which I think are death to anybody.
Yeah.
It's a good way to put yourself in a hole completely, forever.
Sometimes
if you think that
good,
way,
right?
but a lot of people do.
Yeah. Sometimes change is
You have to at
good
least be open to it.
Right. And if you mix things up a little bit, you might be surprised. So.
Yep, it's a shock.
Well, good. Thank you.
All right, my dear. Good to talk to you.
Yes, thank you so much for your time today.
We hope that you enjoyed today's video, and we'll look forward to joining Presentations and Araya for future informational videos. Thank you and have a great day.